now we could get into a little bit of philosophy here, and everyone has the freedom to, pick the thing that turns them on the most, right? But what I think happens typically is, let's just take the novice guy. He goes into a gym. He doesn't know anything about weight training. He feels a little uncomfortable, like a fish out of water, like the guy that's in the least good shape there. But he keeps going back every day, and pretty soon, he's got a group of friends, and pretty soon, you guys are working in together, and pretty soon you got some training partners, and pretty soon you're being included in this group of lifts, right? So inevitably you end up with a group of guys that does bench press every Wednesday, or squats every Friday, or, deadlifts every Monday. And the camaraderie feels good, right? You're included in the club, right? And people like that validation, right? And then all of a sudden you start feeling a little competitive, and everybody's sort of teasing each other and challenging each other and cheering each other on. And, and pretty soon you guys are neck and neck, you're all gaining strength. And pretty soon it becomes like, let's just say a hypothetical situation. Let's just say I'm in this group of 5 guys that meets every Friday for deadlifts. And I'm number 3 in this group of 5 in terms of the heaviest deadlift. Well, there's a, kind of a yearning. It's like, I'm better than these other 2, but I still, if I can only beat these other 2 guys, then I would be the strongest of this group. And so that becomes a goal unto itself. And the irony of that is, when you started this, you didn't have that goal. You went in there, all you wanted to do was look better, feel better, be stronger. Basic, right? And now all of a sudden, your goal has shifted to beating Joe, because he's been the deadlift champ for the last year. And let's say you get to the point where you do beat Joe, and now you're the strongest in the deadlift of this group of 5 guys, and you feel great satisfaction from that. The question is, how good is that? I mean, if you're a competitive powerlifter and you're going for trophies, and there's, some sort of organized reward system, and it enters you in the history books, that's really good stuff. And it's especially good stuff if it earns you money. But what ends up happening is, a lot of people end up pursuing the heaviest deadlift, and they're not competing in organized sport. It's just for the fun of it. In fact, it is for the validation of these 5 guys. But if you went outside this gym to the state level, or to the nation level, or to the international level, you would realize that, my heaviest deadlift of these 5 guys here is pretty much insignificant in the big picture. And yet, despite the fact that it's insignificant in the big picture, I might have already herniated a disc. I might have already injured myself, and I certainly didn't move the needle forward in terms of physique development, because you're not going to get much actual muscle growth from a deadlift. It's mostly hip extension. So, again, I'm not saying what's better than what in terms of sports or preferences of goals, but it's important to ask ourselves, I'm pursuing this goal, and, what's the cost and benefit of pursuing this goal? What's the reward? How long-term will this reward be? How valuable will it be? And what are the stakes? So early on, this was my discovery. Early on, I realized that I could get more in one particular muscle if I do this than if I do that other thing that lets me lift a heavier weight. It was pretty. And then I started studying physics and learning levers, and learning that I wasn't just imagining things. I am actually getting more load on this muscle. Then you can measure it, you can quantify it, and you can see I can get more load on my deltoid by doing a straight arm side raise with a cable that starts at the same height as my hips than I can by doing an overhead press with 3 times more weight. So why would I do an exercise that has a higher cost in terms of energy and discomfort and potential injury risk, when my only objective is to make my deltoid bigger? Mm-hmm. I can do that better just with this exercise right here that gives me 2 or 3 times more deltoid load. So that's when the kind of the light bulb started going off for me. And I thought, wow, I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the game of just trying to get the most amount of weight moved. But when you realize I don't really care how much weight I move or how that compares to anybody else, what I really care about is muscle growth. And I can do that better using less weight with this other exercise over here.
So for some people, Doug, care really about how much weight they lift. That's like for them, even if they, let's say, I play tennis. I love playing tennis and I like practice all the time, even though there is, let's say, injury involved. But I'm not competing in ATP. That's because something that I love, you know. But let's say, John, for someone who loves competing in powerlift, what made you find out about the BRIG20 and start like to introduce them to someone like Larry Wheels, who's known for like the power lifts and even like arm wrestling? I know like he did some arm wrestling with Devin Larratt, which by the way, I spoke to Devin Larratt and I talked to him about the BRIG20, and he kind of like made sense to him that if he involves this, introduces this exercises to his routine, he will get benefit from it. So tell us about that.
Well, I think it goes back to what you said, and I do want to just touch on something really quick that Doug mentioned too, because we talk about. I'm finding out more. I'm going to get to your question in a second, but I think it's even hard to compare yourself to anyone but yourself, because even our technique, our limb proportions, you know, my squat's going to be different than yours. So even like if my 500-pound squat is not equivalent to your 500-pound squat, because our femur lengths are going to probably be different, our torso lengths. And I'm more aware of this now. So I am kind of caring, even though some of the things that I'm doing right now may be viewed at a high level in my mind, I compete at this point for myself. And I'm not really too worried about, I ended up winning my last meet, which is great, but I went in mind to hit an elite total in a different weight class. So I just wanted to kind of say that, because I think that things we are kind of running away from the weight. We are like widening our stance. We're widening our grip. We are doing things to make it easier and doing less work. So I just wanted to throw that out there too. And I think that we should be aware that just because someone lifts more, they might just have really good proportions for the lift. They may not necessarily be stronger.
Right.
So, but they just might be better at that particular lift. But anyways, in terms of what your question was, Mo, since I have been doing this for a long time, and I love it so much, and I see what's going on, I try to be observant of like what the trends are. And I see, I've seen a lot of great lifters come and go because of injuries, because of, potential improper training, maybe poor genetics, poor recovery, whatever it may be. I've been very fortunate not to have anything too catastrophic happen, but I do understand the more you kind of play with fire, at some point there's a greater chance you're going to burn the more you do it. So I'm just trying to figure out a way that I could do this for a long time. And I want to be able to go, I want to stop on my own terms, not because I got hurt. And, you know, it just kind of happened to be coincidence that, you know, I started as a super heavyweight. I got down to 198. And for me, I'm also, you know, trying to do this in a quote unquote healthy way at a healthy body weight, because mass does move mass and your leverages will improve if you gain weight. But I also want to, there's not many 300 pounds, 50, 60, 70-year-old guys. So I know that like that was okay. I squatted 900 pounds in competition. That was great. I've done 1,000 pounds in training. That was great. But I got to like think about long-term, like, is this a good idea for me to stay 300 pounds? So I like to compete in something. I feel like this is something I could do for a long time. I enjoy it, but I realize that there are risks associated with it. So, you know, my thought is, you know, can I do this a better way? Can I do this a safer way? Can I extend my career because I enjoy it so much? You know, and you could apply the same logic to really any sport. If you enjoy running, if you enjoy hiking, if you enjoy like tennis, there's like, you know, co-ed volleyball. I happen to like, you know, and I feel like, you know, I'm a stockier guy. My proportions are probably more suited towards, you know, I don't have a lot of rotary ability, so golf's not going to be like in the cards for me. I'm just not, you know, I kind of chose a sport that I am at the most, I don't think I have the best genetics, but as far as my body, I think I have good proportions for the sport. And I feel like I could do it, whereas other sports, I'm not going to be like doing recreational basketball. I'm barely 5'8". It's just not, and then for me, like someone like Larry, we were talking before the recording, Doug was like, he's got great genetics. It's like, well, imagine if someone with great genetics can put 10 or 20 years into a sport, and what is the possibilities there if he stays healthy? I mean, it's like, he's broken world records in 3 different weight classes. If he can go down as one of the best strength athletes ever, with the asterisk, he's got to stay healthy. And he does, a lot of stuff. Like he does a lot of stuff because he's an influencer. So part of his job is getting attention. So, my kind of job for someone like him and anyone I work with, can I get him to the meet, get them a good performance, but get them out of the meet unscathed? Can I get to them in the meet healthy? Can they do this for a long time? So that's kind of like my thought. Can they do the activity they love and minimize the risk the best they can? Because I do think there's people that come to me, they're like, I want to deadlift 500. These are like goals they're coming to me with. This is something. So, and we could explain the risks to them, but then, okay, we're going to do this a long time. We're going to take our time. We're going to do progressive overload. We're going to micro progress you. I always tell people, like, I've been competing for 15 years. This is my, I could show them on open power. I could show them my progression. I could show them I started at this weight and then I ended up here. I had a guy one time, he's like, yeah, I want to squat 700. I'm like, where's your squat now? 365. I'm like, okay, well, give yourself a decade to do that maybe. And you're probably gonna have to gain like 50 to 100 pounds. Is that worth it? Do you want to have that time investment? So I'm always thinking about doing things a better way. And I don't know if it's by design or not, but I often kind of go against the grain a little bit. And this was definitely something that was not typical. And that almost perked my interest more, that like, okay, this is like not the same old jargon that, because a lot of times, oh yeah, I've seen I've seen the balance ball. I've seen the battle ropes. I've seen the kettlebell thing was a whole, it's a weight, it's a tool. That's a good example of like, people went nuts for kettlebells for a while. And it's like, well, dumbbells are good too. Still, dumbbells are still
weights. Yeah.
They're still dumbbells are still a great tool. Like they didn't and there might be some exercises that maybe like lend themselves better because for whatever reason, I still use a kettlebell on occasion, but I don't think using a lot of momentum, if you're trying to gain muscle, is a good idea, period. Yeah. So like a lot of those traditional kettlebell and weightlifting exercises, unless you're doing kettlebell sport, unless you're doing weightlifting as a sport, I don't think that those exercises make a lot of sense for most people. So just use it not to like pick on kettlebell lifting or weightlifting, but just saying, anytime you're introducing a lot of momentum, there's other things you got to consider, and there's other risks you got to consider. Are you actually in control of the weight? Are you actually moving the weight, or are you just throwing the weight? Yeah. And even the way I teach a lot of the power lifts, like, there are people that dive bomb their squats. There are people that really, I try to teach more controlled descent, because even if they lift a little bit less, they'll be able to do that technique for a longer period of time with less risk. Right. So like, could you dive bomb your squat and bounce off your knee joint and your hip joint? Yeah. But how long are you going to do that for? Yeah. Are you going to deadlift with are you going to like have really aggressive spinal flexion when you deadlift, or can you hold that position rigid and lower it under control? Or, so these are just things I think about.
I think a lot of people feel invincible when they're young and they don't think of long-term. They don't think that they're going to get older. But I don't know if you ever saw that. I did one episode with Rick Drayson on his show, and, he couldn't raise his arms up, and his knees were shot and his back was hurting. Yeah. And I asked him, and I said, if you could flip the switch and just make the pain go away, but have no memory of having ever done those lifts, would you do it? He says, well, yeah, if I could do it over again, I would do it differently. But, I didn't know that. And so, now that I'm injured, now I'm going to go ahead and brag about it because I've already paid the price. Yeah. But if you had your druthers, and if you're, those of us that are in a position to kind of like mentor younger people, just say, listen, I know it feels awesome. And the idea seems awesome to do these really, really heavy lifts. Yeah. But, like you said, consider the cost, consider the likelihood that, you won't be able to lift your arm up, over your shoulders when you're older, or your knees are going to be shot, your back is going to be shot, then ask yourself, well, what was that? How valuable was that reward that it was worth paying that price for it?
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing I just want to say too, like there's going to be a point where, and I hate to say this, but it's true. There's going to be a point where I won't compete anymore. But I want
all of us.
And I want to be able to do that on my own terms. And then, as far as learning from Doug, and I've been, consulting with Doug behind the scenes, I believe that bodybuilding will be a nice outlet for me when my powerlifting days are done. I believe I'll be able to do that a little bit longer potentially. Now, to what level, I don't know, but to my knowledge, I think that, posing and doing these isolation exercises are going to be a lot more joint friendly than putting 800 pounds on my back. So that will be like probably my next venture at some point. I'm still kind of dabbling in it and learning. But I don't know. For me, like, I feel like life's about having a challenge and something to like work towards. And I just like having a goal. And I think that feels really good. It feels accomplished to like, just, okay, I'm going to do this thing and then kind of go after it. That's, but just understand that you could, have some hiccups along the way. But man, I just, like I said, I like having a challenge. I like training for something. And I think for a lot of people, people feel lost in the gym and they don't really know like where to start. And sometimes they can't even get to the gym. And I think if they have like a goal that excites them, and that could be a competition, it doesn't have to be, but if they're like working towards whatever, and sometimes I've noticed with myself, because I've struggled with weight loss, we haven't really talked about that yet, but sometimes getting away from the scale, because that could take so long, you don't see the results as fast. But if you go from, a 15-pound tricep extension to a 20-pound tricep extension for the same amount of repetitions, it's very apparent you got stronger.
Right.
Whereas with the scale, sometimes like it's hard, and people, the mirror and stuff can play tricks on you. And it's good to have a coach to like look at that stuff. But for a lot of people, it's very like, the whole physique thing could be a really tough road. And sometimes I think having some performance goals, going back to the power, I think, whether it's a squat, bench, deadlift, or, a dumbbell tricep extension, a decline dumbbell press, whatever the movements are, I think seeing that progress, I think is gratifying, and just kind of knowing, okay, I moved the needle here somewhere, and this is proof of it. And having that data, I think that's valuable for a lot of people, especially when they're starting out. They could see that I got better. I think that's really important.
Yeah, John, you said like if you want to critique that video, I'm happy to do it. You guys go ahead and do it. I have a suggestion. Maybe it will shock some people,
Okay.
because usually they don't see bodybuilders and powerlifters interact together. I'm willing to come with Doug, and do like, instead of critiquing with a Zoom video, how about we get all together, with Larry Wheels, and we record the video and let people see like how open-minded people interact together, and try these movements. And we can see his reactions and what he will say from a power lifter point of view.
We'll come to New York.
Yes, we can do that.
Strong Island, baby.
There we go, baby.
Yeah, we can do that. And if you believe that we should do it, let us know in the comment section and tell us what you want to see. What do you think, John? Is that something you like to do?
Listen, I love having, any type of lifting party.
That's what it would be. I love that. Yeah.
I was telling, Doug and stuff. So I've taken 2 weeks off from the barbell, which is a long time for me. And I couldn't tell you like some of the I am so sore in certain places. Not to say that soreness is an indication of progress, but I know that I'm working stuff to a degree that I have not worked before, a certain muscle groups.
I just want to clarify. So what you're saying is you got away from the barbell and you started doing cables and dumbbells, and now you have muscle soreness from the cables and dumbbells.
Correct. That's
right.
Correct. Yeah. It's going to be, like I said, it's a process, and figuring out how to kind of marry these two things together. Right. I know that that's like not necessarily your intention, but
they can be.
They can, and that my kind of intention, and I think why we kind of proposed this conversation was like, okay, because I think a lot of people think like, okay, well, they feel like certain people feel like they have to do certain exercises. And I think that if we can learn one thing from this is that realize that there's no mandatory exercises unless you will participate in a specific sport. And I think these BRIG20 movements, I mean, I'm seeing great benefit from them, and I'm excited. It's going to be a long-term process. We have to do an experiment. Like you said, you did those experiments. I did inclines for a year. I took inclines out,
Right.
So like right now I'm kind of in the process of like, okay, like how much time can I get away from the bar and still make progress?
Right.
And I think that's gonna be really cool. I know a lot of people are not willing to do that. I'm willing to do crazy things because it's going to be a learning experience. And then, we could actually, and think about how many other more people can benefit from that long-term experiment. So I'm excited. I'd love to have you guys. The door is always welcome for you. I know you guys we're all healthy and stuff, but you have to save some room for some pizza and bagels. It's very, very important.
Oh yeah. If we're gonna come, we're gonna come for the full experience.
Hey, listen, I want to say one last thing, if you don't mind. I was just going to say that, when it comes to evaluating exercises or evaluating methods of training, I just want to sort of like bring up this notion that sometimes the things that we use that we're not aware of it subconsciously, the things that we use to evaluate an exercise is influenced by our peers, is influenced by the people that we allow to tell us how things should be measured. And in other words, what I'm getting at is that our identity to some degree is shaped by the way others view us. And we're allowing that to happen. We're letting that person pat me on the back and pump up my self-esteem because he is telling me that a 500-pound squat is better than a 400-pound squat. And I bought into it so much that my entire identity now needs it, requires it, that I would be like somehow, subhuman if I didn't squat 500 pounds. And so what I'm trying to suggest is that we need to sort of like think independently and evaluate things logically and sometimes mathematically, right? As I said, difference between tricep involvement on dips versus tricep load on skull crushers, and open our minds up to an exchange of ideas and discussion and conversation, and not let dogma or myth or just tradition or gym lore be the ultimate valuer of our identity. That our identity has to be based on something more than just one person's idea that I've got to squat 500 pounds. I mean, not that squatting 500 is a bad thing. I'm not saying it is. And I'm not saying it's a goal that's not worth pursuing. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that we have to open up our minds and say, it's not either this or that. It's not just one or the other. It's not, these are all in the same family of conversation. It's all part of the same conversation. Muscle load, physical training, it's all part of the same conversation. So our job as intelligent people is to sort it all out and say, what can we take that's good and what can we dismiss that's not so good? I mean, Andrew, made a good comment at one point. He says, what I miss the most about, the big three is, the hanging out with the buddies. Wow, that's an interesting thing, is that became part of the impetus. Hanging out with the buddies, that became part of it. It's like going to church, right? It's like, what do you like best about, being a Catholic? Well, actually Sunday, hanging out with my buddies at the church, right? Wait a minute, that has nothing to do with God. So that's what I mean, is that we have to sort of parse out, how are we valuing what we do? And is that a rational way of doing it?
Fantastic. Well, it was really great. This is the first time, John, we do this, and it happened with you. It was great. Do you have anything you want to say at the end?
I think it's just always important to just have an open mind. And no matter how, like I said, not that I've been doing this a long time, like, Doug's been doing this, far longer. And I think you could probably, you can go to past videos from a year ago, 5 years ago. He's changed his tune and he's changed, I think that it's okay to change how you think. So
that's life.
So I think just be open with that. Thank you guys for watching. I'm really looking forward to, connecting with you guys more. If you guys want to follow more what we do, I'm at Gaglione Strength on Instagram. And until next time, guys, stay strong And then
Yeah,
we'll
send
see
me
you
the
soon.
links. I will add them to the video description. And we will also talk about a good date that will work for all of us and like organize everything.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, John. I
And thank
appreciate
you
it.
for watching. And we'll see you in the next video.